Jeremy had come in peace to the alien world of Chalka, an explorer and scientist studying unique flora and fauna as the only human on the entire planet. He should have been safe, protected by galactic laws, but now everything had gone terribly wrong. He had been collecting samples in a remote jungle when they ambushed him, a squad of hulking Chalnoth soldiers, covered in thick armored scales, toting massive plasma cannons and reeking of aggression. Their leader, Commander Hector, had seized Jeremy, lifting him like a child's toy. "If you are here, human, an invasion is coming. Hundreds of your kind, thousands," the towering alien snarled, saliva dripping from rows of jagged teeth. "No, I'm alone, I don't understand." Jeremy gasped desperately, his voice a ragged whisper as Hector slowly crushed the life from him. The human futilely clawed at Hector's iron grip, legs flailing as he fought for air. Suddenly the huge reptilian Chalnoth released him. Jeremy collapsed to the ground, wheezing and gulping oxygen. He looked up at his attacker looming over him and saw something shocking. Hector's eyes were filled with fear. "This one speaks truth. He knows nothing of an attack," the alien commander muttered to his soldiers, lowering his weapon slowly. "But if a scout is here—" Hector reached down and hauled Jeremy to his feet with disturbing ease. The human nearly fainted as the room spun. Hector's next words chilled him to the bone. "You come from the Forbidden Planet, the death world where even the oceans are poison, where vicious predators walk on two legs, where war is constant and the populace is armed. Terra, Earth." Hector shoved Jeremy into the arms of two guards, their strong hands clamping down on the human's biceps with crushing force. They started dragging him towards a waiting ship. "If your monstrous kind have found us, we must evacuate," Hector said grimly. "Before the rest of you murderous apes arrive to conquer and destroy, as you always have, and you will tell us everything you know about your species' plans." Jeremy shook his head in desperate denial, but it was too late. His peaceful mission had just turned into a nightmare, and if he didn't find a way to convince these aliens that more humans weren't coming to invade, his first contact would likely be his last. As the alien guards dragged Jeremy through the metallic hallways of the Chalnoth Command Center, his mind reeled at Hector's revelation. He fought to keep his feet under him, the clawed hands of his captors keeping him upright. Wait, what do you mean Earth is a mythical death trap? I don't understand," Jeremy shouted, his voice echoing off the strange alloy walls. The human had a million questions racing through his head. Hector glanced back at him, slitted eyes narrowing. The towering alien gestured for the guards to halt in an atrium-like space. Floating holodisplays showed star maps and streams of alien text. "Your planet's true nature is the stuff of dark legends among my people," Hector began. "Centuries ago, when your ancestors cowered in primitive dwellings, the Kath discovered Earth. They were an advanced race, the first to map the galaxy." Jeremy listened in rapt attention as Hector recounted how Kath scans and probes had found an unforgiving world in the grip of monstrous creatures and ceaseless bloodshed. Imagine our disbelief at records showing a planet where even the plant life had evolved deadly toxins and barbs, where titanic-scaled beasts battled in primordial jungles, where the weather itself killed with hurricanes and electrical storms. The data painted a vision of hell, a place antithetical to life. We thought it fiction or error. Hector pointed a long clawed finger at Jeremy as they resumed walking. "Yet now one of its spawn walks among us, proof that such a mad place is terribly, nauseatingly real." The procession reached a large command center, filled with banks of alien computers and display screens. Chalnoth technicians and guards looked up at Jeremy with suspicious, fearful stares. Hector called up a holodisplay showing Earth, covered in flashing red runes. "This is your home system now. Scans show it wreathed in unknown energy fields. Gravitational anomalies. Many think it to be signs of doomsday weapons, of your kind flexing its strength. Perhaps your species has even weaponized the universe itself." Jeremy shook his head frantically, cold sweat beading on his forehead. "No, that's not right at all. You're misinterpreting those readings. This is all a huge misunderstanding." Hector ignored him, tapping a control panel. A wireframe hologram of Jeremy's body appeared, one portion blinking an angry crimson. Stranger still, scans of your weak frame show an energy signature unlike any on record. Our scientists rush to decipher it. Until we know the threat you represent, you will stay here under watch. We cannot risk losing this chance to understand what your species plans. Not before it is too late. Armored guards closed in around Jeremy, pushing him towards a reinforced cell door. The human could only stumble forward, his head spinning with the weight of the commander's words. Jeremy was taken by scientists to a sterile laboratory lined with glowing consoles and gleaming metallic instruments. He was made to sit on an examination table while an array of scanners swept over his body. Alien machines hummed and clicked, taking measurements that Jeremy could only guess at. Yet despite his confusion and fear, he could not help but notice the odd reactions of the researchers. Unnerved and desperate for answers, Jeremy waited until he was returned to his cell. With a furtive glance at the guards outside, he approached the room's sole computer terminal. His fingers flew across the unfamiliar controls, drawing on every trick and workaround he had learned in his xenocomputer interfacing courses. Firewalls fell before his assault. Encryption schemes unraveled like fraying thread. In moments, terabytes of Chalnoth data unfurled across the screen. Most of it was incomprehensible, couched in alien terminology and acronyms. But there were also intercepted transmissions from other species, races that Jeremy had never even heard of, and they all had one thing in common. They spoke of humans in tones of abject horror. A Rigelian admiral warned of human soldiers witnessed fighting in the hard vacuum of space, without any protective gear, shrugging off wounds that would kill a Rigelian twice over. Kriliak scholars wrote of the semi-mythical Terran war gods, beings of flesh and blood who could absorb the fire of plasma cannons without flinching. There were fragments of stories, passed down through generations, of humans wielding unimaginable weapons, weapons that could make suns go supernova on command. Suddenly, alarms screamed to life, jolting Jeremy away from the terminal. He heard the thunder of armored feet, and then Chalnoth soldiers were pouring into the room, weapons aimed squarely at his chest. Hector's face appeared on the wall screen, mandibles flared wide in agitation. "What have you done, human?" the commander demanded. "The energy readings from your body have spiked to impossible levels. Our sensors are overloading from the feedback. If this is some plot to sabotage our systems, it will fail. You will tell me what you've done, or I'll have the information ripped from your—" The screen flickered and died. The lights cut out a heartbeat later, plunging the cell into darkness. Jeremy could hear the Chalnoth shouting in confusion, the blaring of emergency sirens in the distance. He fumbled blindly in the dark, hand brushing against the edge of his personal datapad. The device came alive at his touch. It shone with a piercing blue light, brighter and more vibrant than Jeremy had ever seen it produce. A single line of text glowed on the screen. Human biometric signal recognized. Cath Defense Protocol Omega activated. Initiating pre-recorded message from Cath High Command. Jeremy stared at the crystalline being on his datapad screen, jaw slack with shock, as the Cath's words reverberated through the small cell. The human's mind reeled at the implications of the alien's revelation that his species had been observed, studied, and restrained by this ancient race for eons. As the Cath spoke of humanity's extraordinary potential, Jeremy felt a tingling sensation spread through his body, like a limb waking up after falling asleep. It was as if a veil he never knew existed was being lifted, allowing him to perceive the world with newfound clarity. Jeremy's heart raced as the Cath's form began to dissipate, its final words echoing in his mind. The fail-safes restricting human potential had been deactivated. The fate of the galaxy now rested in human hands, in his hands. As the alien vanished and the datapad went dark, Jeremy heard the hiss of his cell door opening on its own. He rose to his feet, legs trembling slightly as he processed the weight of the Cath's message. From deep within the Chalnoth compound, the cacophony of alarms and shouted commands grew louder, a rising tide of chaos and confusion. But beneath it all, Jeremy could hear something else, a faint, inexplicable tune weaving through his mind, like a half-remembered song from a dream. He stepped out of the cell, the strange melody growing stronger with each passing second. It seemed to be guiding him, urging him forward through the twisting corridors of the alien base. Jeremy broke into a run, his heart pounding in time with the ethereal tune. Chalnoth soldiers appeared ahead, weapons raised and mandibles clicking in agitation. Jeremy skidded to a halt, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. But as the guards approached, the human felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through his body, unlike anything he had ever experienced before. Acting on pure instinct, Jeremy focused on the nearest soldier, willing him to lower his weapon. To his astonishment, the Chalnoth's plasma rifle clattered to the floor, the alien's clawed hands going slack at his sides. The other guards hesitated, confusion rippling through their ranks. Jeremy seized the opportunity, sprinting past the disoriented Chalnoth and deeper into the heart of the compound. His mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. Had he really just controlled the alien with his thoughts? Was this one of the abilities the Koth had spoken of, now awakened within him? As he ran, Jeremy could feel other senses coming alive, dormant parts of his brain sparking to life like fireworks in the night sky. He could hear the thrum of the base's power systems, smell the acrid tang of alien fear pheromones on the air. The walls of the corridor seemed to peel away, revealing a glowing network of power conduits and life support systems. And through it all, the strange melody in his head grew louder, more insistent. It was leading him somewhere, Jeremy realized, somewhere important, somewhere that would change everything. He just hoped he was ready for what he would find. The Chalnoth command center loomed ahead, a cavernous space dominated by hollow screens and pulsing control panels. Jeremy burst through the doors, startling the aliens within. Ektor spun to face him, eyes widening in a mix of shock and rage. "What is the meaning of this?" the commander bellowed, reaching for his sidearm. "How did you escape your cell? Guards!" But no guards came. Jeremy could sense them. Dozens of Chalnoth mines scattered throughout the base, all frozen in confusion and fear. He had done that, he realized, with a growing sense of awe and trepidation. He had reached out with his thoughts and... "Stay back," Jeremy warned, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "Something's happening to me, to all humans. You were right about us, Ektor. More right than you could possibly imagine." Ektor's voice trailed off as he stared at Jeremy's eyes that now blazed with an otherworldly blue light, the same hue as the Koth's crystalline form, the same color as the mysterious energy signature that had led the Chalnoth to Earth in the first place. "No trick," Jeremy said softly. "No games. Just the truth, Ektor. The truth about what humanity really is. What we've always been, hidden deep within our genetic code." He raised a hand, and the command center's hollow screens flickered to life, displaying images of Earth. But not the Earth of the present, an Earth of eons past, when strange and wondrous creatures roamed its surface. "The Koth were right about our homeworld, Commander, but even they didn't know the full story. Yes, our wildlife is vicious. Yes, our climate is deadly, but that's not because Earth is a death planet." The images on the screens shifted, showing towering reptilian beings striding across primeval landscapes, wielding tools and weapons far beyond what their evolutionary level should have allowed. Creatures that could only be described as... "Dinosaurs," Ektor hissed incredulously. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying we weren't the first sentient species to evolve on our world," Jeremy said. "And we won't be the last. The Saurians rose to civilization, explored the stars, and then they sacrificed themselves, guiding a comet to strike the planet and pave the way for the next dominant race, for us. For..." Understanding dawned in Ektor's eyes, tinged with a growing horror. The Koth tampering, it wasn't just to suppress your abilities, it was to make you forget, to erase the knowledge of what came before. Jeremy nodded grimly. "The Saurians passed down their genetic legacy to us, Commander. Hidden traits and abilities, locked within our DNA until the time was right. Until we were ready to claim our birthright among the stars." He gestured to the screens which now showed Earth in the modern day, a world of gleaming cities and sleek spacecraft, of humans working side by side with races from 1,000 worlds. That time is now, Hector. The Koth safeguards are gone, and humanity is about to take the next step in our evolution. We're not conquerors or warmongers. We're heirs to a legacy as ancient as the cosmos itself. Jeremy extended a hand to the stunned Chalnoth commander, his eyes still blazing with that unearthly blue light. Hector stared at the offered hand for a long moment, mandibles twitching spasmodically. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he reached out to clasp it with his own clawed appendage. I say we have much to discuss, human, the commander rasped. Much to learn if our kinds are to coexist in this new age you speak of. Jeremy smiled, the eldritch glow fading from his eyes as he shook Hector's hand. I couldn't agree more, Commander. I couldn't agree more. And as the human and the Chalnoth stood there, hands clasped in a tentative gesture of peace, the strange melody that had guided Jeremy to this moment faded away, its purpose fulfilled. The future, it seemed, was only just beginning. Jeremy skidded around a corner and found himself face to face with a squad of Chalnoth soldiers. The aliens raised their weapons, shouting in their guttural tongue, but Jeremy moved faster than he ever had before. The world seemed to slow down around him as he lunged forward, his body humming with newfound power. He slapped the rifle out of the first soldier's hands, sending it skittering across the floor. The second Chalnoth fired, but Jeremy twisted aside, the plasma bolt sizzling past his ear. He grabbed the alien's wrist, squeezing until he heard the crack of bone, and the weapon fell from nerveless fingers. The remaining soldiers backed away, hissing in fear and confusion. Jeremy didn't give them a chance to regroup. He leaped past them, moving so quickly that their eyes couldn't track him, and then he was gone, leaving them standing in stunned silence. Without hesitation, Jeremy sprinted to the nearest vessel, a streamlined craft that resembled a silver arrowhead. He leaped aboard, his hands flying over the controls as if he had been born to pilot it. The ship thrummed to life beneath him, lifting off the deck with a roar of engines. Hector burst into the hangar, a dozen heavily armed soldiers at his back. The Chalnoth commander roared in fury, firing his plasma pistol at the rising ship, but it was too late. Jeremy's vessel rocketed out of the bay, the shouts of the aliens fading behind him as he soared into the sky. As Jeremy guided the ship through the upper atmosphere, a sudden pressure clamped down on his mind, like an invisible vice. He gasped in pain, his vision blurring, and then Hector's face appeared on the view screen. "You cannot escape us, human," the Chalnoth snarled. "Our telepaths are tracking your every thought. They will rip the location of your homeworld from your puny mind, and then we will—" But Jeremy focused on the melody that pulsed through his very being, using it as a shield against the psychic assault. He could sense the minds of the Chalnoth telepaths, dozens of them, linked in a desperate attempt to break through his defenses. With a burst of mental effort, Jeremy severed the connection. He felt the backlash ripple through the alien minds, sending them reeling in shock and pain. In the aftermath, he realized he could still sense their thoughts, and through them, the consciousness of every Chalnoth on the planet below. They were a seething mass of terror and confusion, their minds echoing with one word: Earth. The view screen flickered, and Jeremy found himself staring at a familiar blue-green sphere, wreathed in swirls of white cloud. The image pulled back, revealing Earth hanging in the starry void. And then, all around it, countless points of light flared into existence. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, more appearing with each passing second. A vast armada of human ships, each one blazing with the same unearthly energy that now coursed through Jeremy's veins. He felt a chill race down his spine as he understood what he was seeing. The full might of an awakened human race, ready to be unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy. The view screen of Jeremy's ship crackled to life, and he found himself face to face with a woman whose piercing green eyes seemed to stare directly into his soul. She carried herself with an air of authority, her uniform crisp and her expression resolute. Jeremy opened his mouth to explain, to tell Nala about his harrowing escape and the revelations that had shaken him to his core, but she held up a hand, forestalling his words. As if in response to her words, the fleet began to move, the ships shifting and realigning into a massive arrow formation with Jeremy's stolen craft at its tip. Nala's voice rang out once more, now broadcast across every human vessel. Today we stand on the threshold of a new era, one where humanity takes its rightful place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Let us show the galaxy what it means to be human, and let our actions speak louder than any words ever could, to Earth and to the future. A cheer erupted from the assembled ships, a sound that seemed to shake the very fabric of space itself. It echoed in Jeremy's mind, mingling with the surge of emotion that flowed from his fellow humans, a fierce determination, a hunger for justice, a resolve to stand against the darkness no matter the cost. And beneath it all, Jeremy sensed a shared history, a legacy of struggle and triumph that stretched back to the very dawn of human civilization. He saw flashes of ancient wars and long-forgotten sacrifices, of heroes who had fought and died to protect the weak and the innocent. It was a tapestry woven from the hopes and dreams of generations, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. As the human armada cut through the void, Jeremy stood on the bridge of his ship, his eyes closed and his mind reaching out across the stars. He could feel the presence of the Chalnoth telepaths, their thoughts a swirling maelstrom of fear, anger, and confusion. With a deep breath, Jeremy focused his newfound abilities, projecting a message of peace and understanding directly into their minds. At first, the telepaths recoiled, their mental defenses slamming into place like blast doors. Jeremy could sense their mistrust, their fear of the unknown power that now emanated from the human fleet. But he refused to be deterred. Slowly, patiently, he shared his memories of Chalka, the towering forests that had filled him with awe, the gentle kindness of the Chalnoth villagers who had welcomed him into their homes, the insatiable curiosity that had driven him to explore the stars. As he opened his mind to the telepaths, Jeremy felt their resistance begin to waver. Tentatively, almost hesitantly, they began to respond, their own memories and emotions flowing back to him in a fragile exchange. Jeremy saw glimpses of a society torn apart by centuries of war and conflict, of resources stretched to the breaking point, of a people living in constant fear of invasion and annihilation. Through their eyes, he saw the toll that this endless cycle of violence had taken on the Chalnoth. The once vibrant cities reduced to rubble, the families torn apart by loss and grief, the children born into a world where hope was little more than a distant memory. And in that moment, Jeremy realized that the Chalnoth were not so different from humanity. They too were victims of the galaxy's cruelty, trapped in a system that had forced them to lash out in order to survive. With this newfound understanding, Jeremy redoubled his efforts to broker a truce between the two species. He proposed a joint research initiative, a chance for humanity and the Chalnoth to pool their knowledge and resources in pursuit of a common goal. The Chalnoth, he argued, had much to teach humans about the wider galaxy, while humanity could offer fresh perspectives and innovative solutions to the challenges that plagued Chalnoth society. To Jeremy's surprise, his proposal was met with cautious optimism from the Chalnoth High Council. After days of intense negotiation, conducted entirely through telepathic communication, they agreed to consider the idea on one condition. Jeremy would have to present his case in person on the Chalnoth homeworld without any weapons or backup. Admiral Saren was livid when Jeremy informed her of his decision to accept the Council's terms. "You're walking into a trap," she warned, her eyes flashing with barely contained anger. "The Chalnoth cannot be trusted, not after everything they've done. You're risking not just your own life but the fate of this entire mission." But Jeremy remained resolute. He knew that this was the only way to forge a lasting peace between their two species, a peace that could change the course of galactic history. And so, with a heavy heart and a silent prayer, he boarded a small shuttle and set course for the Chalnoth homeworld, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the shuttle hurtled through the void, Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that he was embarking on the most important journey of his life. The fate of billions hung in the balance, not just the Chalnoth and humanity, but every species that had been caught up in the endless cycle of war and suffering that plagued the galaxy. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, that there were no guarantees of success, but he also knew that he had to try, for the sake of all those who had come before and all those who would come after. With a deep breath, Jeremy stepped out of the shuttle and onto the surface of the Chalnoth homeworld, ready to face his destiny. The air was thick and heavy, laden with unfamiliar scents that made his nose twitch. The sky above was a deep, bruised purple, shot through with swirls of toxic green. In the distance, Jeremy could see the jagged silhouettes of ruined cities, their once proud spires now little more than crumbling monuments to a forgotten age. A delegation of Chalnoth warriors stood waiting for him, their scaled faces impassive beneath their gleaming helmets. They were armed to the teeth, with plasma rifles and pulse blades that hummed with barely contained energy. Jeremy knew that they could cut him down in an instant if they so chose, but he also knew that he had to show no fear, no hesitation. With a nod of greeting, he allowed the warriors to escort him towards the towering citadel that loomed in the distance, the seat of the Chalnoth High Council, and the site of the most important negotiation in human history. As he walked, Jeremy could feel the eyes of the Chalnoth boring into his back, could sense their thoughts and emotions swirling around him like a storm. Some were curious, intrigued by this strange human who had dared to come alone and unarmed into the heart of their empire. Others were suspicious, convinced that he was little more than a spy or a saboteur sent to undermine their society from within. And still others were openly hostile, their minds seething with a hatred born of centuries of war and bloodshed. But Jeremy refused to be cowed by their hostility. He had come too far, risked too much to turn back now. And so, with a deep breath and a silent prayer, he stepped through the massive doors of the citadel, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The interior of the citadel was a maze of twisting corridors and cavernous chambers, each one more imposing than the last. Jeremy followed his escorts through the labyrinthine structure, his mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios of how the negotiations might unfold. Would the Chalnoth listen to his proposal, or would they dismiss it out of hand? Would they see the wisdom in working together towards a common goal, or would their fear and mistrust prove too deeply entrenched to overcome? And even if they did agree to a truce, how long would it last in the face of such a long and bitter history of conflict? As he pondered these questions, Jeremy found himself being led into a vast circular chamber that seemed to stretch up into infinity. The walls were lined with row upon row of seats, each one occupied by a Chalnoth elder, clad in shimmering robes of office. At the center of the room, a massive holographic display flickered and danced, showing a real-time map of the galaxy in all its sprawling complexity. Jeremy took his place at the center of the chamber, acutely aware of the thousands of eyes that were now fixed upon him. He could feel the weight of their expectations, their hopes and fears and doubts, pressing down on him like a physical force. But he refused to let it overwhelm him. He had come too far, sacrificed too much to falter now. Taking a deep breath, Jeremy began to speak, his voice ringing out clear and strong in the cavernous space. He spoke of the horrors he had witnessed on the Chalnoth homeworld, of the suffering and despair that had taken root in their society. He spoke of the cycle of violence and retribution that had consumed their people for generations, leaving them trapped in a never-ending spiral of war and destruction. But he also spoke of hope, of the chance for a new beginning, a fresh start. He spoke of the incredible potential that lay within both their species, the untold wonders they could achieve if only they could learn to work together. He spoke of a future where Chalnoth and humans stood side by side as allies and friends, united in their quest to explore the stars and unravel the mysteries of the universe. As he spoke, Jeremy could feel something shifting in the room, a subtle change in the atmosphere, a flicker of something that might have been understanding or even empathy in the eyes of the Chalnoth elders. And when he finally fell silent, his throat raw and his heart pounding, he knew that he had given it everything he had. For a long moment, there was silence in the chamber, a silence so profound that Jeremy could hear the blood rushing in his ears. And then, slowly, one of the elders rose to their feet, their robes rustling softly in the stillness. "You speak well, human," they said, their voice like the grinding of ancient stones. "Your words carry the weight of truth and the wisdom of one who has seen much in their short life. But you must understand that the wounds of history run deep, and the scars of war are not easily forgotten." Jeremy nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew that the Chalnoth were not a species to be swayed by empty promises or platitudes. They would need concrete evidence of humanity's goodwill, something tangible and irrefutable. And then, in a flash of inspiration, it came to him. He reached out with his mind, sending a silent message to Admiral Saran and the waiting fleet. It was a risky gambit, one that could easily backfire if the Chalnoth misinterpreted his intentions. But it was also the only way to show them the depth of his commitment, the strength of his resolve. For a moment there was no response, and then with a blinding flash of light, the holographic display at the center of the chamber came alive. It showed the human fleet, arrayed in a defensive formation around the Chalnoth homeworld, but instead of weapons, each ship was equipped with massive cargo bays, filled to the brim with supplies and resources. Food, medicine, technology, everything the Chalnoth needed to begin rebuilding their shattered society, to start anew on a path of peace and prosperity. And at the head of the fleet, a single ship bore a message, written in the language of the Chalnoth themselves. "In the spirit of friendship and cooperation, we offer these gifts to the people of Chalka. May they be the first step on a journey towards a brighter future, one that we will walk together as equals and allies." For a moment, the chamber was silent, and then, with a rumble that shook the very foundations of the citadel, the Chalnoth elders began to cheer. It was a sound unlike anything Jeremy had ever heard before, a sound of hope and joy and relief, the sound of a people who had finally found a reason to believe again. And as he stood there basking in the glow of their gratitude and admiration, Jeremy knew that he had done it. He had taken the first step on a long and difficult road, one that would require patience, perseverance, and no small amount of luck to navigate. But he had also lit a spark of hope in the hearts of the Chalnoth, a spark that could grow into a flame of change that would transform the galaxy itself. For the first time in a long time, Jeremy allowed himself to smile, a true, genuine smile that came from the depths of his soul. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome, and battles to be fought. But he also knew that he would not face them alone, that he had allies and friends who would stand with him, no matter what the future might bring. And so, with a heart full of hope and a mind full of possibilities, Jeremy stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey had only just begun, but already he could feel the winds of change beginning to blow, carrying them all towards a brighter, better tomorrow. But it was the planet's defenses that truly gave him pause. Massive energy shields shimmered in the upper atmosphere, casting an eerie glow across the sky. Orbiting platforms bristled with weaponry that could reduce continents to ash, their barrels trained on Jeremy's lone ship as it approached. It was a stark reminder of the Chalnoth's militaristic might and the risks that Jeremy was taking by coming here alone. As the ship touched down on a landing platform near the heart of the capital city, Jeremy took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. He half expected to be greeted by a squad of heavily armed soldiers, ready to take him into custody at a moment's notice. But as the airlock hissed open and he stepped out onto the platform, he was met by a very different sight. A single Chalnoth figure stood waiting for him, draped in elaborate robes of shimmering silk and adorned with intricate patterns of gold and silver. The alien's scales were a deep, rich blue, and his eyes glinted with intelligence and curiosity as he watched Jeremy approach. "Greetings, Jeremy Wilson," the Chalnoth said, inclining his head in a gesture of respect. "I am Korax, High Counselor of the Chalnoth Assembly. It was I who convinced my people to hear you out, a decision that was not made lightly." Jeremy returned the nod, his heart pounding in his chest as he fell into step beside Korax. the two of them made their way down a long, winding path that led towards the heart of the city, passing towering statues and ornate fountains that gleamed in the golden light of the Chalnoth sun. Jeremy nodded, a flicker of hope stirring in his chest. "I believe that too, High Counselor. I think that together we may be able to forge a new path for the galaxy, one based on cooperation and understanding, rather than fear and mistrust." But as they approached the towering doors of the council chambers, Jeremy felt a sudden surge of apprehension. The doors swung open, revealing a vast circular room filled with hundreds of Chalnoth leaders, each one draped in robes of varying colors and patterns, and as Jeremy stepped forward to address them, he found himself facing a sea of hostile faces. The Chalnoth leaders wasted no time in voicing their doubts and concerns. They pointed to humanity's sudden emergence as a galactic power, the vast fleet that even now orbited their world, as evidence that humans sought not partnership, but domination. They spoke of the Chalnoth's long history of warfare and strife, of the countless lives lost in the name of self-preservation. As the debate grew increasingly heated, Jeremy felt his own emotions rising to the surface. He thought of the cycle of fear and aggression that had gripped the galaxy for so long, of the potential for greatness that had been squandered in the name of mistrust and hostility. In that moment, he made a decision that would change the course of history. Reaching out with his mind, Jeremy forged a mental link with every Chalnoth in the room. But instead of trying to sway them with words or arguments, he shared with them the very essence of his being, his hopes and dreams, his fears and doubts, the fundamental humanity that drove him to seek a better future for all. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, and for a long heartbeat the council chamber was silent. Jeremy could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a blade. And then, one by one, the Chalnoth leaders began to respond. Jeremy felt their minds opening up to him, their own essences flowing into the shared mental space like streams feeding into a vast ocean. He saw their own hopes and fears, their own dreams for a better tomorrow. He felt the weight of their history, the scars left by centuries of conflict and bloodshed. In that moment of communion, something shifted. The barriers that had divided their species for so long began to crumble, the walls of mistrust and suspicion giving way to a new understanding. A vision took shape in their shared consciousness, a vision of a galaxy united not by fear, but by hope. Of a future where humans and Chalnoth worked side by side, their strengths complementing each other, their differences celebrated rather than feared. A future where the cycle of war and destruction gave way to an age of peace and prosperity, where every species had a chance to thrive. As the mental link faded, Jeremy found himself standing before a changed assembly. The hostility in their eyes had vanished, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. Some looked stunned, as if waking from a long dream. Others had tears glistening on their scaly cheeks. Korak stepped forward, his own eyes shining with emotion. "Jeremy Wilson," he said, his voice ringing out through the chamber, "you have shown us the true face of humanity. You have opened our eyes to the potential that lies within both our species, and in doing so you have given us a chance to show the true face of the Chalnoth, a face not of aggression, but of cooperation, not of fear, but of hope." The High Counselor extended a clawed hand, his expression solemn. "Let this be the first step on a new path, one that we will walk together, as equals and as friends." As Jeremy reached out to clasp Korax's hand, he felt a swell of emotion rising in his chest. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges to face, obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in his life, he dared to believe that a better future was possible. A future where humans and Chalnoth stood side by side, united by a bond that transcended species and culture. A future where the galaxy itself might finally know true and lasting peace. As Jeremy clasped Korax's clawed hand, the weight of their shared future seemed to hang in the air between them. The Chalnoth leader's scales gleamed in the chamber's harsh light as he leaned in close, his voice a low, sibilant whisper. "Come, Jeremy Wilson, let us show our peoples the path forward." And so began a journey unlike any Jeremy had ever undertaken. With Corax at his side, he travelled to the farthest reaches of the Chalnoth homeworld, from the towering spires of the capital city to the dense, humid jungles of the equatorial regions. At each stop, Jeremy reached out with his mind, forging connections with the Chalnoth he encountered. He felt their hopes and fears, their dreams and their doubts. He saw the world through their eyes, a world of ancient traditions and cutting-edge technology, of fierce warriors and gentle artisans. "We need to show them that our alliance is more than just words," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "We need to prove that by working together, we can achieve things that neither of us could do alone." "A series of joint expeditions," Jeremy said, the idea taking shape even as he spoke. "Human and Chalnoth, working side by side to explore the uncharted reaches of the galaxy, to seek out new worlds and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before." Corax was silent for a long moment, his claws tapping a rhythmic pattern on the hilt of his plasma blade, and then, slowly, a fierce grin spread across his face. "Yes," he hissed, his voice thrumming with excitement. "Yes, I like this idea very much." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of Chalnoth volunteered for the program, their hearts stirred by the promise of adventure and the chance to forge a new future for their people. The figure paused, its gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "For eons we have watched from afar as your kind struggled in the darkness, burdened by the limits of your primitive technology, but no longer. We offer you now the chance to ascend, to take your rightful place among the true masters of the cosmos." A ripple of excitement passed through the crowd, but Jeremy felt a cold sense of dread settle in the pit of his stomach. There was something about the Zoltari's words, their very presence, that set his teeth on edge. The figure continued, its tone turning imperious. "But this gift comes with a price. To receive the bounty of our knowledge, you must submit to our guidance, our leadership. You must become part of the Zoltari Imperium, now and forevermore." The declaration sent shockwaves through the assembly. Some delegates shouted their approval, their eyes gleaming with visions of power and glory. Others recoiled in horror, their faces twisted with revulsion at the thought of surrendering their autonomy. As the debate raged around him, Jeremy caught Corax's eye from across the room. In that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. They knew, with a terrible certainty, that the Zoltari's offer was not a gift, but a trap, and they knew that they would fight it with every fibre of their being, no matter the cost. Jeremy pushed his way through the throng, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of the Zoltari's sudden appearance. He had never heard of this species before, yet they spoke with the authority of an ancient power, one accustomed to being obeyed. As he reached the solitude of his quarters, Jeremy activated his personal console, his fingers flying over the controls as he searched for any scrap of information on these mysterious newcomers. Hour after hour passed, the room's silence broken only by the hum of the machinery and the soft beep of the computer as it processed his queries. And then, just as the first rays of dawn began to peek through the windows, Jeremy found what he was looking for. It was a single image, buried deep within the archives of a long-extinct civilization. The picture was grainy and distorted, but the figure it depicted was unmistakable. A Zoltari, its spindly form wrapped around the prone body of another alien creature, its eyes glowing with a sickly parasitic light. Jeremy's blood ran cold as he read the accompanying text, a fragmentary account of a species that fed on the psychic energy of other life forms, draining them of their very essence until nothing remained but empty husks. The Zoltari's technology, it claimed, was not a tool of enlightenment, but a weapon of enslavement designed to ensnare the minds of all who came into contact with it. Jeremy leapt to his feet, his heart pounding as the full horror of the situation crashed over him like a wave. He had to warn the others, to make them see the truth before it was too late. But even as he raced through the halls of the Alliance headquarters, he could feel the insidious tendrils of the Zoltari's influence spreading like a cancer. Delegates who had once been staunch allies now regarded him with blank, uncomprehending stares. their wills subsumed by an alien power they could not hope to resist. Jeremy burst into the council chamber, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. But it was too late. The Zoltari's mind control had already taken hold, turning friend against friend and ally against ally. In the chaos that followed, Jeremy and Corax fought their way to the hangar bay, a small band of loyal followers at their side. They knew that they had only one chance to stop the Zoltari, to free the Alliance from their insidious grip. And so, with grim determination, they boarded a small fast ship and set course for the Zoltari mothership, the vast pulsating heart of the enemy's power. The journey through the void was a nightmare of twisting corridors and writhing shadows, the very fabric of reality, warping around them as they drew ever closer to their destination. And then, at last, they stood before the Zoltari leader itself, a monstrous creature with the power to devour the very souls of its victims. In that final, desperate battle, Jeremy unleashed the full might of his psychic abilities, pouring everything he had into a single devastating blast. The Zoltari leader shrieked in agony, its form dissolving into a cloud of noxious vapor. But the strain was too much for Jeremy's mind to bear. He felt something snap inside him, a searing pain that ripped through his consciousness like a knife. As the world around him faded into darkness, he saw Corax's face looming over him, the Kalnoth's features twisted with grief and rage. And then there was only silence, a yawning void that swallowed him whole. In the days that followed, the Alliance teetered on the brink of collapse, its members scattered and divided, its purpose lost in the ashes of the Zoltari's defeat. But even as he drifted in the darkness of a shattered mind, Jeremy knew that the fight was not over. For as long as there were those who believed in the power of unity, in the strength of a common cause, there was still hope for a better tomorrow. And so, with a heavy heart but an unbreakable will, Corax set course for an unknown future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road would be long and hard, the dangers many and great. But he knew, with a certainty that burned like a flame in the depths of his soul, that he would never stop fighting for what was right, for Jeremy, for the Alliance, for the dream of a galaxy united in peace and purpose. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, he would carry on. Always. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.